Get this. Now the White House is coming out with a way for Americans to bypass the Obamacare website and buy policies directly from insurance companies. It's part of this crazy new plan called The Way Things Used to Be. And it's very tricky. That's what we've done.
It is, and it is very familiar. That's the way life used to be. And can't you get that on e-insurance now?
You would think so.
You should.
You know what? This weekend, of course, on Sundays, we watch Chris Wallace doing Fox News Sunday. Chris, good morning to you. I got a feeling you're going to be talking about the Affordable Care Act this weekend.
Yeah, before I say that, I just want to make one point, having seen the interview that Maria and Elizabeth did with those graduates of the Yale's Apprentice Program. Be very nice to them. We're going to all be working for them in a few years.
You are on point there, Chris, for sure.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, let me just tell you what just came across, which has been confirmed by our desk. The Health and Human Services now has a different augmentation of Obamacare. They plan to delay the start of the second-year enrollment until after the midterm elections, so they're pushing it back.
I think it's a coincidence. What are you talking? What are you suggesting, Brian?
What? Did the intonation reveal anything?
Well, I mean, I don't know, because I'm just hearing this as you're hearing it. But, you know, here's an interesting thing. And if Obamacare continues on the path it's on, which is that all the sicker, older people who really need this are going to sign up for it, but a lot of the younger, healthier people are not going to sign up for it. When the insurance companies have to do their reviews and analyze their premiums for the second year, they may, if the risk pool is out of whack in that sense, have to raise their premiums dramatically. Would you want that information before people go to vote or after people go to vote?
Yeah, it's interesting because it had been, it was supposed to take place on October the 15th. Now they've moved it back a couple of, at least a week after the election. You know, you start putting these things together. You also saw the liberal commentators who went to the White House for that closed-door meeting with the president. You see the nuclear option being exercised there in the U.S. Senate. Are these things all connected to the stinking rollout of this thing?
That stinking rollout. We don't need no stinking badges. I'm not sure. I think clearly meeting with members of the press, and frankly, they met with some conservative members of the media a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, this White House knows that they're in trouble, and they have to try to explain things and try to win people over. I'm not so convinced about the nuclear option. I know some people think, well, that was trying to change the subject. But it isn't. I mean, yes, it's a headline in the papers today, but it'll be forgotten by the weekend. It's a two-day story. Next week, do you really think we're still going to be talking about the nuclear option? No, we're going to be talking about Obamacare, and we're going to be talking about the new deadline that the president and the administration have set, which is November 30th. First, they said it's going to be working fine by November 30th. Then they said, well, it'll be working fine for the vast majority. Then they said, well, the majority. And my guess is by the middle of next week, it'll be, you know, take your chances.
Sure. Hey, Chris, so the nuclear option, will invoking it actually come back to bite the Democrats?
Sure. I mean, you know, what it's saying is that the majority ought to rule. I happen to think to some degree that's a good idea. You know, I think if George Bush is the president and there's a Republican majority and they want to try to get, you know, he wants to try to appoint somebody to the cabinet or to a judicial position, unless it's an extraordinarily bad choice, it shouldn't take a supermajority for the president to pick the people he wants. Having said that, you know, the pendulum swings, and clearly at some point there'll be a Republican president and a Republican Senate, and they'll do the same thing. And at this point, there's a carve-out. It doesn't include legislation, and it doesn't include the Supreme Court nominees. Those are still subject to supermajorities.
Yeah, but that's
a slippery slope. That'll change, too.
That's just, yeah, right. I mean, if you change the rules, you don't have any rules. And they're doing this right now just for the appointments. It's just a matter of time until they say, you know what? Sorry, folks, we're going to have to use that nuclear option on this, too. They came close on the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, well, that's right. And there's no question that's going to work. I think that there was a real frustration in the Senate over this, and there have been a lot of filibusters of Obama nominees. But and look, the Republicans, it's also a case of classic hypocrisy, because right now the Democrats are defending it and the Republicans are saying this is going to destroy the Senate. But in 2005, when the Republicans almost did it, almost invoked the nuclear option, it was the Republicans who said that we have to do this, and it was the Democrats who were saying it was going to destroy the country. So it's purely a question of what situation you're in. If you're in the minority, you don't like this idea. If you're in the majority, you think it's a pretty good idea.
And, Chris, the big difference is, of course, they did it, and the others were just threats. Now it's done. It's game on for next year. When I talked to you yesterday on the radio, you would not reveal who your guests were. Suddenly, things have changed.
Not so much.
Well, you got to tell us one, aren't you?
Senator Bob Corker.
Yes, we're going to have Bob Corker, senator from Tennessee, but you were actually told not to ask me because we're still in the process of booking. But we know what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk. Thanks, Brian.
Way to go.
I'm like the Howard Stern in the morning. I just do the opposite.
Did I mention that Charles Krauthammer and Bill O'Reilly have great new books out?
Absolutely.
We're going to be talking about Obamacare. We're going to be talking about the nuclear option. And there's also the possibility of a deal on Iran's nuclear program, a real nuclear program.
Okay.
So we'll be talking about all of that. And thank you so much for asking, Brian. Payback is going to be great fun.
I just want to make sure your show's successful. Chris Wallace, thank you so much.
Tune in Sunday. We don't know who the guest is going to be.
As long as Chris is there, I'm watching.
I like the anticipation. We know Chris is there. That's certainly the best. Thanks, Chris. And Heather Nauert.